Hello friends, and welcome back to my channel. Today we're finally doing a sketchbook tour. Now if you've been following my work or you've seen my previous videos, you know just how much I love my sketchbooks. One of my favorite videos to film has been my massive sketchbook tour of a bunch of sketchbooks I kept over the years since I was a kid to when I was a teenager. These books hold so much history to me, they're so special and so important. It's such a blessing to see just how much you've improved and to be able to look back on everything that you've done. So whenever I get the chance and when I finish the sketchbook, I love to just sit down and look back at what I've done, and also partly to reminisce about how my life has changed as well. If you've seen my previous sketchbook tour, that one is a good example of that. It was a really important book for me because I filled that sketchbook in a very tough time in my life. It holds a bunch of memories, a lot of things that I had to overcome, and just the struggle of trying to improve after being discouraged for a really long time. And today, this sketchbook that I'm sharing with you holds a lot of history too. It's almost like the next chapter of my art journey, where in the previous one, I was a little bit scared, I wasn't sure of what I was doing, and I was trying to improve and overcome all of my fears. And this one, I feel like I've learned to breathe again. I'm so happy with my art and my progress. I'm really proud of everything that I've achieved. And a lot of you have actually been asking for a sketchbook tour since most of the drawings in the sketchbook you have seen before on my social media, either through videos or photos. And it's been an entire year, so I think it's going to be so cool to take a look at all of it from start to finish. And you know, it's been really conflicting lately, the fact that I do love digital art and it's still like my main form of art. As you can see from like the drawings in my background, maybe you've seen me more doing digital work. But this last year, traditional art has become such a big part of my art journey and process. It's become so much fun. I've gathered a lot of new materials, I've experimented a lot with different things, and that shows as well in the sketchbook, which is super fun. This was the sketchbook where I got a full set of colored pencils for the first time, of like 60, which for me is a lot. I tried alcohol markers for the first time too this year, which is really cool. And so for me, after all of these sketchbooks, I think that this one, if I had to sum it up in a word, it would be just exciting. So sit back and relax, and let's take a look at my most recent sketchbook. Alright, so let's take a look at the sketchbook. I actually haven't looked at these drawings in a while, especially the first one, so let's see. Now the first thing you can see is that I didn't fill in the first couple of pages. I think that was a mistake. It was usually I leave just 2 empty, which doesn't make a lot of sense. It's that thing about being nervous about starting a new sketchbook and it feels so intimidating. So I skip a few pages and it helps me mentally. But this drawing, I do remember it. It was the first drawing in this sketchbook. I decided to start off with something that I feel a bit more comfortable with, which is drawing with colored pencils. These are the Caran d'Ache Super Color Soft pencils, which are water-soluble pencils, so they're super soft and creamy. And I use loving them for sketching and drawing pieces like these. This was from the imagination, and the thing about these colored pencils is that you can't really erase them, so it's always a fun challenge. And this is a really special one. This is a drawing I made on my way to Rome in my honeymoon after I got married. Now this is how I know that this sketchbook took almost a year to complete, because of this date right here. In this setting, it was in June last year, and I finished this sketchbook in May of this year, so almost a year. I took this sketchbook with me, as I often do, just because I might get the chance to draw something interesting, especially going to a different country. But it really wasn't the case because I was busy just visiting a bunch of places. But I'm still very nervous about drawing outside, but it was just a fun way of passing the time. It's just a doodle, you know, it's nothing very complex. Here we have our first sketches with graphite. These are studies that I do using references from Pinterest. I love studying different faces, different shadows on the face, and graphite is always fun to use. It's basically the first material I ever used, so I love it, and I love using my mechanical pencil for it. Here we have more drawings, also from reference, and this is the stage where I started to draw just a bunch of clothes, things that really inspired me. I think that's a good way of starting a drawing session, is to just search around for things that inspire you and go ahead and just try them in your own style. And using these pencils again, the line work just pops so much. The colors are so soft and nice. And I can't erase them either, so sometimes you'll find some sketchy lines underneath the drawing, but I think that's okay. I really like these drawings. And this one I think was one of my favorite pages at the time, because I really felt like drawing with inks, and I was really inspired by drawing like themes of nature and flowers and plants and all of those organic shapes. And so I remember that I was really proud because I drew these with reference, but I actually didn't sketch underneath and did everything straight with ink. And I was really happy with how it turned out. Even these areas here that are very dark, it just creates this sort of contrast that's really satisfying. And I'm not even a big fan of hatching and cross-hatching, but I think it worked out well here. These are some more studies from reference. I think I'll add the videos that I shared of these drawings as I go. They're going to be plenty, so I'm going to have a lot of work to do, but I think it can be fun to see the videos that I made against the drawings. And these are super fun because of the hair. I just have such a great time with hair, drawing all the shading and the highlights. It's super, super fun. Here are more studies with ink. I think it's a great idea to draw things a little bit outside of your comfort zone. So this is definitely it. I usually draw a lot of people, a lot of characters. So it's always a little bit more challenging, but you get results that make you feel really proud, you know? And here I was studying some statues. I really love these drawings just because I remember I only had those Caran d'Ache pencils and I only have a set of like 12, so there aren't many. So I couldn't really play with color too much. So finding these references and managing to use only a few colors felt really fun and intuitive. And studying all of these shadows, all of the interesting poses, I think this one turned out nice. I really like it. A few more doodles and sketches. These are the ones that are messy. I think it's fun to look at. And I think that these ones here in the corner, I actually finished them digitally for a drawing that I also shared. Again, always filling in all those corners. Even if I just draw a nose or a mouth, I don't know, it's satisfying. These were from reference too. I don't draw as many male characters as female ones, but every time I do, it just reminds me of how much I enjoy it. It's just something I don't do as much, I think. And here are a few studies for a drawing that I also made in ink. These usually really portray how I'm feeling at the time, so it's fun looking back, and it also kind of reminds me of where I was and the things that I've overcome, so it's really fun. This one was also from reference, and it just made me realize how much I enjoy mixing red, orange, and yellow together. Something that I didn't quite know it would work so well, but I didn't have a lot of choices when it comes to colored pencils, so using this limited palette really opened my eyes to a few new possibilities. And here I had a lot of fun trying to draw different things that inspired me that I wasn't used to drawing, like shoes, clothes, accessories. Graphite is always fun to do these with. It's a little bit out there, but it's just fun, you know? I remember that for years I really didn't draw clothes at all. So it's super cool to see now, even in my digital work, how much I try to explore different things with clothing. There's so much opportunity to have fun with them and to express different things. Here are a few drawings with ink. I love trying to add some symbolism or some stories to these ink drawings. I think it's so much fun. And these sketches, I think you've seen them before. They're from my previous video where I created this entire piece in ink. It was super cool and I really enjoyed talking about that topic as well, about the enjoyment of drawing and how things have changed with social media and everything. And it was great finishing this spread. It was pretty complex, it took me a while, but I think it was worth it. A few more drawings, again with my favorite colors, the blue and red colored pencils. I believe I finished this one too digitally. I don't know how much of these videos I'll be able to add because I think these both had their own videos. There are so many in here. I did so much last year. And if you've been meaning to invest more time in your creative hobbies and skills, today's sponsor might just be the right one for you. This video is sponsored by Skillshare. Skillshare is the largest online learning community for creatives, taught by industry experts, all in one comprehensive and fun place. You might have heard about their photography and film classes, but you'd be surprised to know just how many categories of classes they have to offer, from graphic design, creative writing, illustration, and more. And lately, since my creative job as a freelance artist has become more and more complex, filled with tasks and deadlines, I've been meaning to find new ways to improve my organization skills. So I've been finally learning how to use Notion with Ali Abdal's Notion Masterclass. You can learn at your own pace and even share your own projects, have discussions, and get feedback from the community, which is incredibly insightful and helpful. Skillshare also features learning paths, which are curated class collections that will guide you on your career path by focusing on the different stages and skills that will take your hobbies, passions, or even side hustles to the next level. So this summer, with the school breaks and slower work schedules that give many of us a bit more time to delve into our hobbies, come improve your skills or explore a new side of your creativity by learning new ones. And the first 500 people to use my link in the description will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. So don't miss out and get started today. Thank you Skillshare for sponsoring this video, and let's continue with today's tour. These eyes I also painted digitally, and this was a drawing made from the imagination, using those colors that really inspired me. I think at this time this sketchbook became really a place where I take the time to draw something in its own page, almost like an illustration by itself, and not use them as much as a messy sketchbook. Even though there are still pages like these where I study things, this was super cool too. You can tell that I'm obsessed with like the Regency era and the eras of kings and queens and all of the movies that have so many cool references, so many cool clothing and jewelry. It's just something that I've been exploring a lot since then, and I kind of figured out that the themes that I like to draw mix well with those visuals as well, so that's a plus. And at a certain point, I like to try and mix different colors together to see what I can come up with. I think it's always fun to add color to sketches. I think it can add a lot of personality and even a mood. For example, these drawings, I remember the video was pretty successful too, and people really enjoyed how feminine it looked, how much these drawings felt soft and sweet, and I really like that about them. And something about all of that feminine clothing really calls to me. It's something that, like, for the first 10 years that I drew, I never really realized. And now it just kind of clicked, you know? Here are a few body drawings from the imagination. I also really love this one. It was from a reference that I thought was really cool. Just looked so like nice and calm. And sometimes when I'm not filming or trying to create something very complex, I just go ahead and find different things that I like the shape of and draw them along just to see how it feels. This is a great way of keeping new ideas in my head. So sometimes I'll start a finished illustration, you know, something more complete, and I'll go back and see some of the doodles that I made and realize a few different things that I can use in my pieces. And that can be really great to keep the creative juices flowing. This was really fun too. I loved all of those details. This was from the imagination, and it's the sort of example of after you draw a lot of things from reference, you can kind of blend them and make your own because you get a reference for what sort of works. And I think a lot of what my style is now is just that, me drawing a lot of things that I like and then mixing them together in a way that I can do by myself without references. I can explore the things that I really enjoy. And here, going a little bit outside of my comfort zone, drawing some animals, which I love adding to my pieces as well, but it usually needs to have like a meaning or a specific theme, so I don't usually add them as much as maybe I should. And something that you might notice is that as we go on in this sketchbook, the drawings that I start to make become a little bit more complex. It's not really something that I did on purpose, but since I was sharing everything that I did, sometimes just drawing like a little doodle of a face would work out well, and it's entertaining and fun to watch. But to me, I really sort of need to focus on improving my skills. It's my main focus. It's something that, you know, if you're following social media, if you're trying to grow on there, it can become sort of a priority by itself. And unfortunately, art can fall to the side a little bit. And that's not what I want at all. I just wanted to keep improving and challenging myself. And that meant creating a few more complex pieces like this one. I used these few colors that I really like together, and I think it worked out so well. I was so surprised using like 4 colors, mix them together, it looked so nice. At this stage I was really inspired by colored pencils, and I just wanted to get some more so that I can do things that are like a little bit more ambitious. A few more drawings from reference. These were actually from a live session I made. It was super fun. I was really nervous, but it was fun, and I enjoyed these drawings a lot. I used references, and again, playing with hair, with details in the clothes. I love doing that. I think it's the best, especially because you can get away with a lot and just draw a lot of little details and little things that people might not notice, but overall the entire piece, when you look at it, looks great. If you look too closely, you might see a lot of doodling and things that don't quite make as much sense. And here I believe is where I got my new colored pencils, a set of 60, and they're super great. I really enjoy them. They blend super nicely. They are pretty vibrant, even though it doesn't show as much in these pages because they are a little bit yellowish. But this is where I started to play around a little bit, and I was still pretty shy and I didn't quite know how to use them as much. But then I started doing some studies here and there and got a little bit more comfortable. More drawings in ink. You'll see that I draw with so many different materials here. Like, it's the best. I think this is exactly what a sketchbook is made for, and I had so much fun trying different materials. This was the first time where I used those color pencils and I felt like, okay, I got something here. I think this is gonna be exciting. I tried drawing simple things from reference to just check the different colors, see if they could blend together. And it got me so pumped to try and draw different things, and from the imagination too, like this one. The colors just blend so well together. I think, to me at least, it was super worth it to get a set that was a little bit bigger. It doesn't have to be one of those giant ones, but just like 60 I think is a really nice amount to get great results. Here we have some random sketches. Here too, I kind of remember where I was when I was drawing these. It's super fun using your imagination and just trying to imagine different poses. And using these color pencils just makes it a little bit more fun. I really like this drawing here. You know, to be honest, we usually look at graphite as like the sketching tool. And for me, when I did this one, it just reminded me of how much I can create a more complex illustration and still make it really cool with just graphite. I don't know, just the highlights, the transparency of her skirt, the details of the leaves. I think you can do a lot with so little materials. And I remember that this one really surprised me with that. I tend to forget. We usually get stuck on the idea that like we need to have a lot of different things to make something good. And that's not true. These drawings were super fun too. I think one of the questions I get is how I choose references. And like, usually these spreads start off with just one drawing of something that really inspired me in the moment, and I just keep adding to it as I go. But the trick for me is to use references, but keep everything in my own style as well. If I'm studying like the anatomy or doing a more realistic study where it really needs to be the real thing and not stylized, that's one thing. But for me to study like different hairstyles or clothes or different accessories, I think I have the space to exaggerate a little bit and to set things to my own style. And to me, that's the best part of doing these studies, is to just find the things that I find really interesting and try to draw them in a way that I would like to see it. These are from the imagination. Usually you can tell if it's from the imagination when it's a little bit crazy like this, but I just really like drawing the torso in different poses and even trying to doodle different poses for different illustrations. I do that mostly digitally and I share those on my Patreon. I have been doing that for a little bit and it's really cool to see because usually I would delete those and it's something that I've learned not to do, and I save them to show them to you guys. And this drawing was super fun too. It was from the imagination as well. Again, those colors, they just pop so much. And as I go, I just keep going for those materials that I like, practicing the things that I enjoy. And I got really used to just filming everything to put them in short videos like Reels or Shorts or TikToks. And I think it can be really cool to see the process behind it. But I'm not gonna lie, sometimes it takes me away a little bit from the drawing experience. So I'm thinking I'm gonna do a little bit less of that in the future, just because the focus here is really to improve and I don't want to get too distracted. Because sometimes I find myself doing that, where I'm thinking so much of the outside and what's happening and what I'm putting out there that I forget to just sit down and do it for myself, like these studies from a few different poses that I found online, using some foreshortening, some more challenging things. I think at this point I'm feeling a lot more comfortable with what I do, but I don't want to be too comfortable. And these were from the imagination. I don't know why. Call me crazy. I just really love the shape of like the thighs and how they connect to the pelvis. I just think it's so satisfying and flowy, and sometimes it's a good way to fill up a few pages just with doodles. A few more drawings from reference. This one, I remember it. I really like this drawing here. I have this idea to do with ink, and by the end it felt a little bit empty, so I started drawing with graphite as well, just to really sharpen in those edges and shadows, and I think it worked out so nicely. I really like it. This is a really crazy one, but I remember that this one was actually a study, like a little doodle, for a drawing that I did later on with alcohol markers. Let me see if I can find it. I think it was a mermaid. Yeah, it was this one. This was the drawing that ended up being inspired by this sketch right here. And I love using my sketchbook for doodles like these. And this part right here that seems a little bit chaotic, I actually remember doodling these because when I'm stressed out, I really like drawing organic shapes like flowers. I just remember feeling really stressed out and I didn't know what to draw and I wanted to keep up with my schedule. So I just sat down and doodled a little bit to try and relax. And it actually helps me. You know, sometimes you want to draw, but you don't know what. And for me, a good thing is to just start moving my hand no matter what and try and draw something, even if it's nothing, you know, stick figures, whatever you want. It's a good way of grounding myself and reminding myself of what I'm doing and what matters. It's the joy of doing it. Doesn't have to be perfect. Just doodling feels great because I love drawing so much. And these were so much fun. You can tell that I'm being a little bit more playful with colors. And throughout this sketchbook, I do this a few more times where I just go a little bit nuts and try something different. And I really appreciate how it turned out because I really wasn't sure if it was going to work out, you know? I believe that I started off with just the red pencil and then I kept bringing up more and more colors and just doodling around in little hatched squares like these right here at the bottom. And I remember it was just so much fun. It felt so playful to not take things too seriously. And I think I should do more drawings like this. This was me drawing at home. Again, it's usually when I'm a little bit stressed out and I need a little bit of a break. And here it was still winter, we had our fireplace lit, and I was really excited to try out these markers that just create this little wash of color. Because when I was trying to draw with ink, especially outside, it always felt a little bit empty to just leave the lines by themselves, even if I were to use a little bit more thick lines. I just needed a little bit of a wash of something. So these were perfect and I had a lot of fun using them. This was more of a fun study and like a doodle without any guidelines, but I did end up loving this pen so much that I ended up using it a few more times after this in the sketchbook. So I'll link that too in the description. These were from the imagination. I really love her expression. It felt like when I drew her here with her crown and like all of those flowy shapes, I just knew that I needed to try and draw her again. So I tried a few different poses and expressions, and I even thought of drawing her digitally, but I guess I forgot and I never did, but I think it's cool. Here I'm playing with color a little bit more again. I tried to use alcohol markers here, but I think they bled a little bit. Yeah, they bleed through these pages. I only use a Ohuhu marker pad when I'm working with alcohol markers, just because they hold on to the ink pretty well. Not the case here on this one, but I think this was a lot of fun too. These were from the imagination. And just, you know, playing with details, I think it's something that I found to be so much fun. These were the studies for another drawing that I made on my marker pad, which was this one. And I really love the colors that I used for this one. I think it worked out really nicely. It was a bit of a different experiment. You know, this is the stage where I'm thinking like, well, if I'm able to do these drawings in my sketchbook that feel a little bit more complete, why not try and actually make finished illustrations that you can just create by itself in a separate page? Something that I'm not used to as much, but lately I've been doing a lot more of, and I really like it. Even this drawing that I have framed behind me, I think it's a good exercise in being able to see what I do and display things, you know, not have them all hide inside of a sketchbook. I think there's a lot of value to that. And this was a really interesting spread. I got a new inking brush that I was so excited to try out. It's the Pentel Pocket Brush, and it has such a fine tip, like a fine edge, that I knew would be a little bit harder to control, but I was really excited because it does create the flowiest lines ever. And so I tried to draw directly with ink on this spread, and I think it worked out well. It was one of the most satisfying videos to make just because of how everything really came to life from nothing, and it felt super fun to just try to play around and draw whatever I wanted. And again, I used that brush pen that just makes these washes that really make everything else pop, which that was a really cool addition to it. This was a drawing that I was really excited about. Don't look at it. I painted it red and I regretted it. But so the video I posted ended up being just with graphite, which for me was perfect as it was, and I liked it and I had fun. I thought it was cool. But then after I finished filming, I tried to use a pen brush to paint it red, but it didn't really work out the way I wanted it to. And the shading I did completely disappeared and I was so sad. But the only people who actually got to see this version were my supporters on Patreon, who got to see the mess that I made. But other than that, I think it was a fun experiment. And again, this is a place to fail as well, so I really don't regret doing it. These are a little bit messy. I don't think I recorded these. I remember it was just a late night drawing session because I wanted to unwind a little bit and just draw from the imagination whatever I felt like. It's again one of those scenarios where I just want to draw but I don't know what, so I just draw whatever I want. Here we have a few more studies here to the right, and here I was just trying to play around with a few different ideas. I think that this one actually ended up being another piece. It's a bit of a smaller one, but I think it's cool too. It was this one. I think it looks pretty simplistic for what it was, and at the time I was planning on adding colors, but then I just really loved how these green shadows looked and kept adding green and yellow, and by the end I think it looks cool. It's a little bit different from usual, especially not the colors I'm used to using, but I think that's what makes it interesting too. And here was another playful session with colored pencils. You can tell how excited I was to using all of these new colors that I had, and it was super interesting to try and use that strategy again of just drawing the colors that felt right first and then just adding bunches of different color on top that, you know, I wouldn't usually add. They feel a little bit crazy, but if you look closely to like this part of her hair, for example, I'm not really abiding by the laws of like shadows and lighting, and it's not perfect, but it's fun and it's interesting and different, and I actually ended up really loving using these colors together. I think they look interesting. This was actually a funny story. It was a Sunday morning where I didn't really know what to draw, and I wanted to draw something for myself, you know, not to post, not to be super creative, but just to have some fun. And so I picked up a few flowers in my neighborhood and I drew them here in my office, and it was super fun. It's this sort of thing that really reminds me of how much I just love drawing, not just to share it or to try and prove anything to anyone. It's an actual fun hobby and a fun thing to do. And sometimes it's good to take the time and not take it too seriously and do something that's just fun for fun's sake. These were really interesting studies that I did with that Pentel Pocket Brush Pen, and using it for all of these little details, it's the best feeling ever because it's so sensitive, the tip, that it just creates the best different shapes, even if they're not on purpose, you know? Like, for example, for the hair, it's something that I'm very careful with and very slow with and just try to get the exact shape that I want. But then in other places, I can just roam freely a little bit and have fun doodling things that don't really matter, but the end result still looks really nice because of them. It's super fun. And again, with those washes of gray, it's really satisfying to add them in the end. Drawing a little bit more with color. All of these different clothes are super interesting to keep here and sometimes go back to if I'm feeling like I need some inspiration for a piece. And here we're getting to a more recent territory. I really like this drawing. I made it from the imagination too, and it's something that doesn't work out all of the time, but it's crazy that like most of my drawings that I do digitally are all from the imagination. I don't use reference unless it's for like a specific pose or a hand gesture, but when it comes to drawing traditionally, we almost think that these are just sketches, but they can be a full-on illustration. They can create stories by themselves. And this, I don't know why, I think it's the pose or the braids. It just became one of my favorite recent drawings and I really, really like it. A few more doodles. This was the first time that I got my acrylic markers. And it was really a turning point for me because the last time I had tried a new material was with alcohol markers, and that just opened up a bunch of different possibilities. So this one did that same thing where it just felt so interesting to try something new and to see how these reacted with each other. These are markers, so you can't really blend them. They are super opaque, so you can correct a lot of mistakes pretty easily, which is cool. But it's also very decisive and definitive. And I'm all about subtlety and shading, so it was definitely a challenge getting into it, but the colors are so nice and bright that it just inspired me to add more color to my sketchbook. Here are a few more studies with colored pencils. Some of these didn't really turn out how I expected them to, but it's always a great exercise, you know? And here I'm really exploring with those acrylic markers. I'm getting a little bit more comfortable, and I found that keeping these palettes a little bit more constrained made for a better experience for me, at least, especially when I'm still learning. But learning how to do some of the shading here, even in ways that I wasn't expecting, and creating different effects that show light in a different way, for me has been really, really special to learn. This ended up being a lot of fun, and it kept me really inspired to keep trying different things like this. And this here, I went drawing outside. This was in April this year, so we're almost finished here. This was super cool. I actually did a hike with my partner, and at the end of it, there was this river filled with rocks and like these super high rocks filled with greenery. And that actually is a dude that was walking on the lines above, and it was so cool and crazy. And it was a really sunny day, and it had been raining for a long time, so this is a great memory. A little bit all over the place, but nonetheless, I really enjoy it. I really need to start drawing more outside, I think. It's really fun. This was a spread that I made for a drawing process on my Patreon. Again, I'm getting a little bit more comfortable with markers, but also a little bit more ambitious in trying to get outside of my comfort zone. It's not always easy, but I think that just finding colors that inspire you can help a lot, and by the end, this is such a fun experience. It's absolutely worth it. Here are a few more drawings from the imagination. Again, I'm playing with that pen, and the more I get comfortable with this pen, like the more I feel like I can explore and just draw things as I go. So drawing this hair was a lot of fun. It feels so much like comic book art where the highlights are super high and the shading can even leave a little bit of the lines. It feels a lot more organic and flowy, and that's all I'm here for, honestly. I love it. Here, these sketches are a good example of a study for a drawing that didn't turn out exactly like this sketch, but I did love this pose right here. It felt very balanced and nice, and I knew I wanted to use orange and pinks. So I remembered I did this one, which is so nice and pink and flowy. It's fun and a little bit different, but honestly, you couldn't even tell that it came from this one sketch. And here we have a few more studies that I like to do. This one I got really detailed with. I think there's something so satisfying about having these thicker lines on the edges and thinner ones in the details. I think it works out well. And again, it gets me used to drawing those themes that I like so much and add a little bit more information to my visual library. And here we have a few free-flowing drawings, just doodling from the imagination. Again, I might find a pose that I like and use it in a piece, or it's just interesting as it is, and it makes for a great time drawing. And these are the crazy pages that I don't show ever. This is the place where I try out new materials and see how they work on this paper. So they look absolutely crazy, but they're really useful, and I think the last few pages are a great place to do these things. And I think that that's it. And like I mentioned at the start, there are a few more drawings that I made in this marker pad that I really like this one that I also posted on Patreon on a drawing session. And this one too, as a study, it's super fun to play around with these colors. But again, this paper is a lot better to use alcohol markers and for me to practice. So it's been a lot of fun and a lot of learning too, but I've been really enjoying how it has turned out. And recently I've been a lot more into trying to draw in loose pages, and I think it's been great. Like the most recent one has been this one, which I don't know, after a while when I just draw something that looks finished and nice in a loose separate page, it just makes it feel so much more clean and almost like important, you know, it feels so precious now. And I think I'll keep doing that for a while and do different pieces like this. And also every chance that I got, I will try and display them more. I think that could be a lot of fun. And there you go, almost a full year of drawings in one sketchbook. I hope you've enjoyed coming along in this journey with me. I've already started a new sketchbook, so when that's over, I'm going to share with you too. And other than that, I have a few video ideas that I'm working on already that I'm really excited to share with you as well. If you've enjoyed watching this video, let me know in the comments. And also let me know what you think. Do you have a sketchbook right now? What do you use it for? What materials do you use? Is it messy? Is it super clean and tidy? What are your thoughts on these sketchbooks? And before we go, I do have to say a big thank you to all of my patrons this month. If you haven't seen it yet, this year I finally opened up my Patreon page and I've been putting so much love into it. We have step-by-steps and illustration process videos every month and a look behind the scenes of how I create my pieces, like my sketches, the references that I use, and so on. So if you are my patron right now, or if you have been previously, I just want to say thank you so much. It really means the world to me. And if you'd like to check it out, you can find it in the link in the description down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.